Udo was a man of immense wealth. He was well known around a small Lagos community, but despite all his wealth, Udo has a fear, the fear of being poor. Even though Udo was one of Nigeria's richest men, he lived in constant paranoia, guarding his fortune with his life. His wife, Imisi, daughter Dara, and son Ade suffered under his stinginess, living in conditions that betrayed their father's billions. No one could tell that they were Udo's immediate family, as they had to survive on cheap food and used clothing. They resided in a small crumbling apartment on the outskirts of Lagos under pitiable living conditions. Whenever Imisi advises her husband Udo to at least build a small flat for them to live, he would sit with her and together they would write down the cost. Or at the end of the day, Udo would exclaim and complain about the cost of erecting a building. Did you know that the kind of money I will use to erect a building for us will fetch me 3 times that amount in a single month if I invest it in my business? He told Emisi one day, showing her his calculations. What is the essence of building a house with a huge sum of money when we can always rent it at a cheaper price? Please try to understand me, Emisi, my wonderful wife. Emisi, tired of her husband's attitude of holding money tight and depriving himself of many things, would nod in agreement because she has learned over the years that she cannot win an argument with a stubborn husband. Emisi tried to argue his points, but as usual, he advised her to stop chasing material things and embrace a simple lifestyle. Years later, Udo was at a function when he received the biggest shock of his life. A young boy, Emeka, who worked with him for many years, has just completed a very big edifice in Udo Street. Emeka had invited him to celebrate with him. Udo attended, but what he saw shocked him. He was very pained that Emeka could waste a huge sum of money on such a building, and he called him to a corner of the compound. He asked Emeka why he would make such a financial decision when he knows that the money he uses for business will be greatly affected. But Emeka replied that a building is an investment and not a waste of money. He advised Udo to get a similar structure and he would get back with his returns in no distant time. Months passed before Udo finally gave it a thought and erected a similar building 5 streets from where he lives. After completing the mansion, Udo told his family about it and they were very happy to finally move to a bigger space. Udo's family hugged him and prayed for him and he was happy. The family started planning to move out, but every truck brought by Missy is often too expensive for Udo. So he held a meeting where he addressed their moving issue. I've been thinking of how best to cut costs since the truck drivers have decided to rip us off. I cannot pay a huge amount of money just to move our things from here to the next 5 streets. I would suggest that we carry everything one after the other. By the time you open your eyes, you'll be surprised that we would have packed everything. Emisi was very angry at the suggestion. She asked Udo how paying a token for hiring a truck would affect his money and why he wouldn't like comfort for once. Udo sang his usual song. Why do you like being wasteful? At least you are not handicapped or sick, so why can't you carry your properties on your head? How many properties do you even have? Emisi began to cry. She asked Udo why he had decided to be a slave to money. But Udo started screaming, this woman, you have started again with your emotional blackmail, right? I won't stand here and watch you cry. He stormed out of the house while Emisi's children hugged her and consoled her. Emisi has been struggling and her business has not been bringing in much money. The fact that Udo doesn't contribute or help her is not helping matters. After waiting for 2 days without seeing Udo, Emisi and her children decided to carry the property on their heads to their new apartments. But when they got there, they received the shock of their lives. After going back and forth to bring their properties from the 5th street, Emisi knocked on the door. Our kids were about to take the properties inside when a man opened the door. He asked them why they were knocking so loud. Do I know you and why do you knock so loud? The man asked, looking at them from head to toe. Emisi was surprised to see the man. She asked if Udo was around, but the man said it's a wrong address as no Udo lives here. Emisi said she was sure because they had been to the house while it was being constructed. She introduced herself as the wife of Udo. the owner of the building. "Oh, I'm so sorry, madam. Your husband rented out this place. He stays at the back," the man said, pointing at the boys' quarters at the back of the building. Imisi could not believe her eyes. She rushed to the boys' quarter and she found Udo eating on the balcony. "I thought you didn't want to move before. So why did you come?" Udo mocked Imisi and her kids, hissing. "Udo, just tell me you are joking. Why would you rent out the main house and leave this tiny boy's quarter for us? What did we ever do to you?" Udo pretended like he did not hear his wife. He packed his plate of food and went inside the room, leaving them as they watched in shock. They packed their things inside in silence with different thoughts running through their minds. "But mommy, how can we live in this tiny room? How can daddy do this to us?" Adi protested, his voice filled with disappointment and tears building up in his eyes. "Daddy really went too far with this, mommy. This is very unfair. I can't even bring my friends here after bragging that my daddy built a big mansion." Dara sobs as she paces from one end of the room to the other. Whenever Udo heard them complaining, he would always say, "There is no need for extravagance and money is better saved than spent." He also refused to give his family any money for upkeep. Instead, Udo made it a habit of going to the market himself to buy food and other necessities. He would argue aggressively, never missing a chance to save a few naira, even if it meant getting substandard goods. His wife, Imisi, had long given up asking for anything. Every request was met with the same response. "Why waste money on that? It is unnecessary." The family knew Udo had money. Of course, everyone in the city knew. Rumors began to fly around that Udo had a massive fortune locked away in a secret room at the back of the mansion. The room is impenetrable, and the family had tried everything from locksmith to brutal force, even breaking down the room's door several times. But the large gleaming safe inside could only be unlocked with a special key that Udo guarded closely. This room haunted their imaginations, representing the life they could have but were denied. Udo's frugality extended to all aspects of life. One day, he told his wife and kids that he had just bought a car for them to move around with. Emisi and her kids were very happy that Udo finally decided to buy a car. He informed them that the car was undergoing some maintenance at the mechanic, and the family danced around in joy. When he brought the car home, his wife and kids stood in shock. It was a 1960 Volkswagen Beetle bringing out black smoke every time he started the car. "My wife, can you believe that I got this car for just 50,000 naira? And I did the repairs for another 50,000. That is just 100,000 though." Udo bragged to his wife as he hit the exhaust pipe of the car with a stone. "Imagine Emeka telling me how he bought a car for 12 million naira. A whole 12 million naira," he said, opening his eyes wide in shock. "Did you know how much profit I will make from that 12 million naira in a month? Chai, Emeka is wasteful oh." His wife did not respond to anything he said because she knew advising him would be a total waste of time. "Come inside, my loves. Let me take you on a ride," Udo told his wife and kids, but they all left him there. Udo said he wasn't surprised because he knew they wouldn't be happy with his choice of car. In his words, "It is my money and I can do whatever I want with it. I have always told you people that there is no gain in being wasteful, but you guys will never listen." He entered the car and drove off, the car emitting black smoke throughout the neighborhood. The car breaks down every 3 minutes. Udo had been told to always hit the engine with a stone and it would start again. Udo continued this routine of hitting his car engine with stone until the people in the neighborhood noticed him. Udo became a joke in the neighborhood. When the neighbors see Udo, a billionaire, pushing his battered car from one end of the street to the other, penny wise, pound foolish, they would whisper. His stinginess did not stop at material things. Udo refused to pay for Dara and Ade's university education, insisting that learning practical skills was far more valuable than an expensive degree. "Skills will feed you forever. School will only drain your pockets," he would preach. Imisi, determined and hardworking, was undeterred by her husband's refusal. She put Dara throughout university by selling food and working late into the night. When Dara graduated, she took up a high-paying job and immediately began saving to send Ade to school, determined that her younger brother would not suffer the same way. Both Hadi and Dara eventually graduated, becoming successful professionals. Their hard work contrasted sharply with their father's irrational fear of poverty, a fear that had kept him clinging to his money while they scraped by. Despite their success, Udo's iron grip on his wealth remained unbroken. He never acknowledged their achievements, still holding fast to his belief that his way of life, hoarding every penny, was the only path to survival. Years later, the government was sharing rice for the poor in Udo's community to help relieve them. Udo heard the news as he was going to his shop that morning. He overheard some women saying they would sell the rice given to them by the government to make money. Udo quickly calculated how much money he would make from getting 10 bags of free rice, and he quickly went to the queue to get his own rice. A lot of people who knew Udo in the neighborhood wondered why he was on the queue. A man asked him jokingly, "What are you doing here, Oga? With all the plenty of money you have, do you still have to come here to drag rice with us?" Udo replied to the man by explaining that it is none of his business because he doesn't know how much money he has or even if he still has money. He attacked everyone who questioned him or those who cast questioning looks at him. Udo was on the queue from 8 a.m. in the morning until 12 noon, but the truck of rice did not arrive. The truck later arrived by 1 p.m. when the whole place had become too crowded. People began to push themselves, and this led to a stampede. Udo was one of the people affected, and he was severely injured. He was rushed to the hospital while he was still unconscious. When he woke up the next morning, the first thing he asked his wife was the hospital bill. "I have settled your hospital bill, but you have to pay me back because I was keeping the money to add to my business." Emisi explained all the money she paid to Udo, including the money for drugs, but he screamed in shock. "Why will you pay such a huge amount of money for my hospital bill? Why can't you insist on taking me to a government hospital? How many times do I have to tell you the importance of being prudent? Thanks for the lecture, Udo, but I wasn't there when you decided to queue for a bag of rice like a beggar and get yourself injured. Some good Samaritans brought you here and came to inform me. You should be thankful to them rather than complaining about the bills." Emisi replied, angry at Udo for being insensitive. Later that day, Udo discharged himself out of the hospital against the warnings of the doctors. He bought some cheap medicines from a local chemist who comes home to clean his wounds. But his situation became worse and his wife advised him to go to the hospital for tests and proper treatment. After a series of arguments, his wife took him to another hospital. The doctors ran some tests and recommended an expensive course of treatment. Udo, horrified by the cost, left again, continued with his cheap generic treatment from a local nurse. It deteriorated quickly after that, and before long, he was bedridden. As his health worsened, he became even more paranoid, clutching at the key to his safe and having nightmares about thieves. One evening, with his family gathered around him, Udo lay on his deathbed. His breathing was labored, and his eyes, once sharp and calculating, were clouded with fear. "Promise me," he started with slow breath, looking at Emisi, Dara, and Ade in turn, "that you will not touch my money, not even for my burial. I do not want a lavish funeral. No waste. I do not want you to waste my money." Emisi, her voice calm but her eyes blazing with years of pent-up frustration, asked him for the key to the safe. "Udo, let us at least bury you properly. Give us the key." But Udo only smiled, a bitter, twisted smile. Without a word, he reached under his pillow, pulled out a small glimmering key, and to their horror, he swallowed it. He choked briefly, but the key was gone. He lay back on the bed, his chest rising and falling unevenly. A moment later, he was dead. For a long moment, the room was silent, the air thick with disbelief. Emisi, Dara, and Ade stared at Udo's lifeless body, their minds racing. The key to their father's fortune was now locked inside him, forever out of reach unless they took drastic measures. At this point, Ade and Dara were making their own money, so they were not really bothered about their father's money. But then, all the billions cannot go to waste, even if they do not need it. "Do we?" Ade began, his voice barely a whisper, as he looked at his mother and sister. Dara's mind was already working. The whole event seemed unimaginable. The thought of operating on the father's body just to retrieve a key sounds unbelievable to her. But then again, has it not robbed them of so much for so long? This was their inheritance, their rightful future. Mrs. stood frozen, her hands trembling. I can't believe he would do this to us, even in death. They were left with an impossible choice. If they did nothing, Udo's entire fortune and years of suffering and sacrifice would remain locked away and unreachable. If they acted, they would have to cross a line they never imagined. Dara finally spoke, her voice steady. We need to make a decision. Either we let the money go and move on, or we find out to open the safe. They stood over Udo's body, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. Days later, Udo was buried in a small ceremony to the amazement of his friends who knew his worth. Emisi did her best to entertain the small guests who came for his burial ceremony like Udo wanted. When his friends complained, Emisi explained to them that it was Udo's dying wish to have a small burial ceremony, and the guests murmured as they left one after the other, wondering why a man could be so miserly up until his death. Weeks later, the family were worried that the money in Udo's safe would become useless if they did nothing about it. As they debated their next move, Ade saw a shiny object beneath his father's favorite book. He moved towards it to have a closer look and he picked up the key. He showed his mom and together they rushed out to open the room where Udo kept his safe. And luckily for them, the door swung open as the key was a spare key. Ade tried to open the door to the safe, but he found out that it was all open all this while. While Udo was ill, he had forgotten to lock the safe one day when the nurse came to attend to him. He swallowed the key because he thought he had locked it. As the safe opened, thousands of dollars poured from the safe to the room. Mrs. Imisi and her kids were overwhelmed with joy. After a while, she sat in a corner of the room crying. This is a valuable lesson to you kids, she said amid sobs. You will agree with me that being a slave to money leads to pain and regrets. Your father's life is not worth emulating, and I will advise you children not to follow his footsteps. We will be donating 80% of the money to the needy, while we keep the 20%. The kids sat in silence and nodded in agreement. They will never become slaves to money like their father. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share. And let me know what you think about the story before you leave.